Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video. Recently found out my 30 male, wife, 29 female, is a worker. We met in high school and dated throughout our senior year, but we had different goals. She was off to college, and I was joining the Navy just like my father and grandpa. We kind of drifted apart and dated other people until 2012, when we ran into one other at a mutual friend's wedding. That night, I fell head over heels in love with her all over again. I proposed a few days later, before returning to my military post. She agreed. We married in 2014, and she moved to Georgia to live with me. We had 2 wonderful years together, but in 2016, I was deployed abroad for the last 2 years of my contract, and she returned home to live with her parents. After 11 years in the Navy, I retired in December 2018. We moved into our new house in March with the intention of starting a family. Everything was going swimmingly until approximately 2 weeks ago. My phone died 2 weeks ago, and the warranty replacement would take a few days to arrive. My wife suggested I could use her old phone in the meanwhile, since it was previously associated with the same family cellular account. We both went to work that day after the wireless retailer temporarily put her old phone to our account. I began putting some of the applications I required to her old phone during the day. I saw she had uninstalled all of the applications from the home screen, but they remained installed and visible in the app drawer. I came upon the old messaging app we used while I was stationed abroad and had a lovely time reading some of our old discussions, thankful that our marriage had survived a 2-year gap and that we were happier than ever. Then everything went to hell. She was discussing college debt with one of her pals in a text chat from last year. My wife said that she received a degree, but had never utilized it. She specifically said, "I kicked my for 4 years in college, got into debt, and now I do hand jobs for a livelihood." What? She works at a nearby resort's all-female beauty spa. Her customers are mostly elderly women. So I reasoned. I never planned to spy, but after reading that, I looked through her whole phone on purpose. Then at home, I browsed through her laptop. I didn't discover much, but what I did discover was rather disturbing. When I questioned her later that evening, she admitted to having private male customers with whom she sometimes gets physically engaged. She's been doing it since she returned home in 2016 to live with her parents while I was deployed, and she's made it plain she has no plans to stop. She told me everything she does in graphic detail and told me that if I didn't like it, I could go on with my life without her. We haven't seen each other since June 30. It was excruciating to spend the 4th of July without her. We finally got together for lunch today. If she stopped seeing these guys, I was prepared to forgive and forget. But she refuses to budge, not even a smidge. She claims her customers are out-of-town tourists and business people, and she performs safe S, so I won't be harmed in any way. She claims she only does this a few times a month, and that she wants to take advantage of her physique while she can. And she doesn't even think it's cheating. She claims to adore me, but I have no say in the matter. As she said, my jaw fell. Who is this individual? I'm quite open-minded, but I never would have expected my wife would be having S for money and speaking so authoritatively about it. This is like a horrible nightmare that never ends. I adore her. I'm going to die without her. But I'm upset and deceived, and I'm not sure what to do next. She is not willing to make any concessions. Is it my only option to accept her and her newfound profession? Story 2. My wife cheated on me, but only after I did. The destruction of a man. This, my friends, is a heartbreaking real story, and I'm not sure why I'm typing it or if anybody will read it. It's late at night, and I haven't slept in months. I've likewise been unable to discuss this with anybody, so maybe this is my way of sharing. To begin the tale, we must go back to July/August of 2015. My wife and I had relocated because I had enlisted in the Army. She'd never been away from her family before, and I imagine she felt lonely. She obtained a job and acquired some new pals. I was pleased for her, but it turned out to be our undoing. Every day, she and Amy, not the girl's true name, spent together. Amy introduced her to drugs, which shattered our marriage. During this period, my wife seldom spent time with me or spoke to me much. She would shout at me in front of her buddy, and her companion would even berate me. This is when I made the fatal error. I went online and met a woman we'll name Bianca. Bianca was lovely, and clever. I hadn't made any friends in my unit, So it was wonderful to have someone to chat to who didn't seem to dislike the sight of me. I met Bianca around 2 weeks after we started talking online, and we slept together. My wife found out and was much more devastated than I had anticipated. It broke my heart to watch her weep. We agreed we needed some space, so she returned home for a week to be with her family. I expected her to spend this time to reflect on our marriage. As most of you would expect, she slept with someone else right away. They would meet almost every day, use pot, drink, and sleep together. After she returned, she lied about the romance for approximately a month. She continued changing her mind about it, telling me one day that they had slept together and the next that they hadn't, and that she had just told me that she had slept with him to make me upset and punish me for my transgression. My wife came home, and instead of therapy or even just sitting down and talking, she resumed berating me every day and spending her time with Amy. Amy was able to summon my wife away from me at any time of day or night for any excuse. It made me terribly envious, but I did not abandon the marriage. I'm handing up all of my passwords to everything. My phone was examined every day by her, but I didn't have the same level of access to her belongings. If I had, I would have discovered that my wife was still talking to the guy with whom she had slept every day. While I was at work or she was with Amy, they were video chatting. Every day, they texted back and forth. Everything from I love you to various texts and movies. Let us fast forward to December. My wife and I seemed to be getting along well. Amy had mostly vanished from our lives when she quit using cocaine. We took a holiday and drove back home to see relatives for Christmas, 30 HR Drive. We joked, played games, and played old-school music from our youth. It was incredible. We agreed that she would keep the automobile and remain with her parents, while I would stay with mine. We are not wealthy and are still relatively young. My wife then went to see her friend Ashley, and guess what? They walked over to the man's place and smoked, drank, and even made out with each other to amuse the guy and his pals. Her and the man had us once more. My wife and I went on a date the following day, and we spent Christmas Eve with my family. It was fantastic, and I had a terrific time. Apparently, once we returned home, she and the man, I'll give him a name, Charles, lost touch, but she had found a new passion back home, Matthew. Matthew is a much older guy. My wife is 20, he is 40. Matthew and my wife met on a dating website where she was sending naked pictures to anybody who messaged her. Matthew and my wife had met twice, one of which she had stayed the night. Her and Amy devised a scheme to fool me into thinking my wife was spending the night at Amy's. I noticed my wife's attitude had altered and she appeared pretty off a week after she spent the night at Matthew's. She suffers from bipolar disease. I asked her what was wrong one day when I came home to get something for work, and she informed me she slept with Charles again while we were home in December, and she recently slept with Matthew. I was heartbroken, but I had to go to work. About 20 minutes later, I received a call from my wife's workplace stating that she had not arrived for work. I contacted her, but she did not answer. I eventually called our neighbors, who went to check on my wife. I got a call back indicating that my wife had requested to be sent to the emergency department. She was suicidal, didn't seem to be reacting, and seemed distant. I hurried to the emergency department and stayed in silence with her for 5 hours before she was admitted to the hospital's mental unit on the base where I work. I visited her in the mental unit every day, sitting with her for hours. She rejected the meds and was experiencing severe auditory hallucinations. Her marijuana and cocaine usage, according to the psychiatrist, exacerbated her bipolar condition. Furthermore, the last psychiatrist she saw gave her medicine, which exacerbated her bipolar disease. Instead of a mood stabilizer, they gave her an antidepressant. She was sent to a civilian hospital since she was a citizen at a military hospital and denied care. I couldn't see her as often as I used to, but I did go to see her and cuddle her. Of course, we couldn't discuss about her adultery or decide if we should be together at this period. 3 weeks later, she was freed, and we felt it was best for her to be surrounded by family, so we sent her home. Back home, she continued to take her medicine, enrolled in college, and found work. We don't communicate much because, well, I was upset and didn't know whether I wanted to be with her. She stated she was done with cheating and apologized. In May of 2016, she came to see me for a week. It went better than I expected. We chatted, and she admitted that she hadn't spoken to Charles at all. I trusted her and conducted some study on bipolar infidelity before deciding to forgive her and attempt to heal our relationship. I cheated on her as well after forcing her to relocate hundreds of miles away from her home. I'm not one to blindly believe, so I decided to go into her Facebook and discover that she has looked up Charles around 3-4 times a week since she came back home, but there have been no communications between them on Facebook. I decided to access my Verizon account and see who she'd been messaging. In April, I noticed she had contacted Charles multiple times. They texted and spoke on the phone for hours. I questioned my wife YET again whether she had spoken to any males since she had returned home. She informed me that Charles had contacted her, but she had ignored it, sensing that I had dredged up information. Needless to say, when I probed her, her tale shifted and unraveled. She claims she eventually called him to get marijuana and ended up smoking with him. She claims they never had sex and that she only saw him once. According to the records, they ceased chatting on April 29th. They chatted on the phone for an hour TWO times on April 29th. And then my wife phoned him 9 times in a row and he never responded or answered, and they haven't spoken since. I had a video conference with her approximately a week ago and instructed her to dial his number on speakerphone. They converse and he admits that they did not have sex in April. However, my wife and I were disconnected for around 2 minutes on the initial call before she called me back. So there's a 2-minute gap, and she's previously shown that she's skilled at deception. Her rationale for checking him up on Facebook is that she had stopped communicating to him and wanted to make sure he didn't publish any of their images or videos. I realize it makes no sense, but whatever. She claims they haven't spoken since April, that she regrets everything, and that it was foolish of her to smoke with him and see him again. She has evolved. She has made an effort, but I can't seem to sleep well anymore. I still don't have any friends here, and I've been sleeping on the sofa since my wife was admitted to the hospital. I've been really hating myself for cheating on her and blaming myself for everything. I didn't speak to her enough after she came out of the hospital and drove her back to Charles. If I hadn't been weak and cheated first, she would never have slept with or ever met Charles. Now, on Reddit, you've read my condensed account of events. I'm not sure whether I'm looking for guidance or if I simply wanted somewhere to vent. I'm feeling a lot better now. I'm hoping to get some sleep tonight. This is my first Reddit post, and I'm not sure whether anybody will read it. Please leave a remark or anything if you read it. Tough love is welcomed, as is hatred, and even the Darude. Sandstorm remarks would be appreciated in breaking up the despair, suffering, and loneliness that has become my existence.